Welcome to Disaster Zone, a show about emergencies and disasters. And these are things we want you to be prepared personally, as a family, and as an organization to be able to respond to and then recover from these events. What would happen after a major earthquake? You've probably already heard that you should be prepared to survive on your own for at least 3 days. That means 3 days worth of food and water. But what about prescription medicines? What if you depended on life-sustaining medications like insulin? You may not be able to just go to the pharmacy and pick up more. Today's show is going to be with my guest here, Vidya Nair, who is a pharmacist and has an initiative to talk about, and we'll just talk about the whole role of dispensing drugs in emergencies and disasters in general. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric.
Right. Great to have you here. I want you to give a little bit of background just on yourself, your training as a pharmacist, and your role in pharmacy medicine.
Okay. Well, my name is Vidya Nair. I'm an ED pharmacist, and I work for a large healthcare system in the state of Washington. And my training, I have a doctorate in pharmacy, and I've been practicing as a clinical pharmacist for the last 4.5 years. I've also done a postgraduate year 1 residency, which qualified me for the position to work as an ED pharmacist for the last four and a half years.
And we're acronym free, so.
I am so sorry. ED means Emergency Department Pharmacist.
Okay.
So
that's a specialization within?
Correct.
Okay.
That's something that you would see within a healthcare system. There are specialized clinical pharmacists.
Okay.
So that's my background.
Okay. And so what role do pharmacists play in the healthcare system as providers? I think about the plethora, the wide variety of drugs that are available now, and I know there can be conflicts between drugs and that. So, what role do pharmacists play in this entire healthcare management?
In a nutshell, pharmacists exist in healthcare structure to ensure safety, and to provide responsible access to medications. And so where will you see a typical pharmacist in a healthcare structure? The most visible place you'll see a pharmacist is in a retail setting, such as Walgreens or CVS, your other major retail pharmacies. Typical roles there would include dispensing of medications, counseling patients on those medications, and providing vaccinations that you would see, flu shots, etc. Other areas that you would see a pharmacist in action in a healthcare setting would be hospitals. Healthcare system pharmacists such as myself, my specialty is emergency department, and so what you would see me doing is participating in performing CPR, assisting medication selections during during the case where somebody's crashing.
What does that mean, if somebody's crashing?
So if somebody's actually dying, somebody who has lost the pulse, and we're trying to resuscitate him using CPR. There's critical medications that we will provide. So I'm there to facilitate the appropriate drug selection, dose selection, looking at disease states and making sure that the drug is compatible with that particular disease state, right? And adjusting if there's a kidney function issue or liver function issue. So I'm providing drug information services, in a critical setting like emergency department. Or if somebody overdoses, I coordinate things with the Washington State Poison Center to make sure that appropriate care is given to the patient in a timely manner. So that's basically, a specialized, very focused clinical setting.
And so you're not really standing behind the counter.
No, I'm actually out and about, interacting with the patients, physicians, nurses. I'm the liaison between all these designated healthcare professionals. In another setting that is very pertinent to the initiative that we're going to talk about is ambulatory care pharmacists. So the pharmacists that you see in clinics, in Indian Health Services, Veterans Affairs, other clinics, facilities that have clinics like heart failure clinics, diabetes clinics, high blood pressure clinics. Pharmacists act as clinicians. We're able to look at labs, we're looking at vital signs, and then looking at the patient's clinical picture. How do you present to the clinic? And then putting all of those together, we make drug recommendations on adding medications, deleting medications, titrating up the medications, titrating down the medications, of course under the supervision of a medical director. We're not diagnosticians. We manage disease states and the medication adjustments associated with it. So those are some of the roles that we provide. We're visible in public health services also.
So not a question we've talked about, but I think it has applicability. I mean, you have a patient come in, it's emergency room, they didn't come in for an appointment, so to speak. What would you recommend to people who have a variety of medications they're already taking? How would they be the best way to communicate that to ER staff, emergency room staff, and for you to be able to understand that? I mean, is it written down on a piece of paper somewhere? They may not be conscious. I mean,
so somebody who comes in with a past medication history, how do we procure those accurate medication lists? Right. That's part of my job. We call it medication reconciliation. So what we would do is, let's say if there's a loved one, the family member there for the patient who is unresponsive, right. We would get in touch with them and say, hey, do you have the actual physical vials with you, the prescription vials with you? Then we take a look at those and reconcile them. Or we ask them, where do you get your medications filled at? And so I would call a retail pharmacy and get the most updated medication list, or the patient's clinic, let's say. They follow with a cardiologist on a regular basis. Who's the patient's cardiologist? So we try to get as much accurate information as possible from the primary source.
So you're doing detective work?
Yes, I guess, lots and lots of detective work.
All right. So, I mean, that's day to day. You have a new initiative that's called Pharmacists Response Network. And what is it, and how did that all begin?
It all started with my exposure in Hurricane Katrina. I was a student pharmacist at that time. I was working as a technician at a major retail pharmacy in Georgia. We had a mass displacement of patients from Louisiana to the suburbs of Georgia to the alternative care sites located across our pharmacy. We had a mass throng of patients coming into our pharmacy requesting for access to their diabetes medications, high blood pressure medications, seizure medications, et cetera, et cetera. We did not have any federal or state aid that allowed us to provide them with a 30-day supply of these chronic care medications. So we turned them away. And many of them reported to the emergency departments for refill requests. And as an ER pharmacist, an emergency department pharmacist, it's absolutely inappropriate to seek refill requests in an ED setting, emergency department setting, which is really for the sickest of the sickest patients. And so many of these patients went to seek primary care services and refill requests in an ED. Worst, those patients that were left with no access to medications for 4 to 5 days ended up developing debilitating diseases like stroke or heart attacks or diabetic ketoacidosis, which is very lethal. And it really drained the healthcare resources at that time, which really could have been prevented by having a pharmacist take proactive steps by providing them access to those chronic care medications. I saw this fast forward 10 years later, similar issues I witnessed similar issues in Sandy, Hurricane Sandy. And out of this experience
is when... And that happened in the New York area.
Correct, Hurricane Sandy in the New York region. And out of that exposure a year and a half ago is when I decided, let me get in touch with the thought leaders in disaster response and see what is pharmacists' role here? How can we get them more engaged in this? And under their guidance, I was able to start a nonprofit called Global Humanitarian Pharmacists Network. And the primary purpose of this organization was to provide access to chronic care medications and the management of those chronic care medications through utilization of pharmacists for displaced disaster survivors. And I wanted to pilot this initiative in the state of Washington. And now fast forward to September 2014, this initiative got picked up by the State Pharmacy Association. We got partnered with the Department of Health, the Colleges of Pharmacy in the state of Washington, and Arcs Response. And soon this initiative got placed under the umbrella of Washington State Pharmacy Association. And now it's called Pharmacists Response Network. And our goal is really the same mission, to provide access to chronic care medications to displaced disaster survivors through utilization of pharmacists. And we mobilize our pharmacists to these alternative care sites to provide them access to medications right then, so that they don't have to go anywhere else.
Now, is the association mobilizing the pharmacists?
Yeah, so in the event of a disaster, actually the needs assessment is actually performed by the Department of Health, Office of Emergency Management, and they will then in turn contact Washington State Pharmacy Association, and the criteria to be activated for Pharmacist Response Network to be activated is such that if there's a formation of an alternative care site, and if it's a disaster lasting greater than 24 hours, then yes, Pharmacist Response Network can be activated, which will then deploy disaster-trained pharmacists to the site that's requesting help. and we set up a little mobile unit, and we screen patients, stable patients, if you will. We're not diagnosing any new disease states here. Stable patients in need of refill requests will come to our mobile site. We write them prescriptions for medications. Patients will then collect medications, the scripts for the medications, go to a pharmacy, and fill it.
Okay. It's really this aspect of being displaced that
that's the key thing.
Key.
Right, displaced.
Because they're not in their parent or their home network where they have access to be able to do this. Okay.
Yep, and our primary objective is to keep them away from the ED, keep them healthy, be proactive.
And what types of diseases are you most concerned about?
The initiative focuses on 7 most commonly seen disease states during disasters, chronic disease states, if you will. So hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, COPD, heart diseases, cardiovascular diseases, seizure, depression, and anticoagulation. Those are the 7 disease states that we're going to focus on. Of course, we plan on expanding those. That's not a comprehensive list by any means, but we start off with 7, and then we expand on. Is
that because they're life-threatening?
Correct. Yeah. If you do not take care of a high blood pressure or high sugar level, you are going to develop something lethal like diabetic ketoacidosis, or high blood pressure can lead to stroke or a heart attack, or several other disease states I could talk about, or an active seizure, or an asthma exacerbation that never gets addressed, can lead to death.
Okay, all right. So in my 25 years of working in emergency management issues, and I think myself as being pretty well read and interact with a lot of people, I blog on the topic, and that, why haven't I heard of it until I happened to meet you? I mean, is this really cutting edge stuff compared to the rest of the nation, or?
I just think that my personal opinion is that pharmacists' role is under-recognized and underutilized in public health arena, period, mainly because there's a lack of awareness of what we're capable of performing. Dispensing and providing vaccination is a very, very, very important role that a pharmacist performs, but we are not being used in our full scope of practice. We can offer clinical services also, like I mentioned with the clinic pharmacists. And so it's just not advertised well enough. I think that's the primary reason why you're hearing this for the first time. But no, this initiatives have been launched, such as the National Pharmacist Response Team. It's just that they became defunct due to funding issues at a national level.
Okay. Well, we're at our break for halfway through the show, so don't go anywhere. And for your folks at home, don't you go anywhere either. Watch this message, and we'll be back more to talk to our resident drug pusher, Vidya.
In the event of a catastrophe, you need to know what to do to make it through. By preparing now, you and your family will have a better chance of surviving when a catastrophe happens. Here are 3 tips to get you started. Have an emergency plan with meeting places and an out-of-area contact. Prepare a supply kit for your family and pets that includes what you need to survive for 7 to 10 days. And be prepared to help each other. Start now and take the first step to protect the ones you love. For more information, visit makeitthrough.org or find us on Facebook.
Welcome back to our show about drugs and pharmacists and a new program called the I'll get it right, Pharmacists Response Network. And the guest we've been speaking with here is Vidya, and we're going to pick up where we left off. I know I called you a drug pusher, but...
That's okay.
All right. So disasters are different in many respects. We talked about some of those. Any other pieces about how that it's different in the administration of drugs for chronic diseases in a disaster?
Okay, I would say more dispensing than administration in a disaster.
Okay.
Yeah, it is absolutely different with the chronic piece because there's so many initiatives surrounding addressing acute care needs during a disaster. And if I could define really quick what an acute versus chronic is. Acute is basically if you're having an asthma exacerbation, I've got to take care of you right now with those rescue inhalers. Or if you got exposed to anthrax, I got to get you those antibiotics right now, Cipro, right away. Yeah. Your favorite drug.
Yeah, thank you. I was on Cipro earlier. So.
And so chronic is a little different because this is like high blood pressure or diabetes or seizure medications. You need ongoing access to those medications, and you're most likely on those indefinitely. You're stable for the most part, but you need to maintain that. To maintain that stability, you need to have access to those chronic medications. And that's a piece I don't think is the most robust in the current emergency response framework. And because it's an unmet need in the emergency response framework, the actual dispensing of the chronic care meds is not happening. And so patients are actually going to the emergency departments to seek that care, which is inappropriate.
And you probably see that.
We do. Actually, we still, I mean, in a non-disaster setting, we still see it. But, you know, it's expounded in a disaster setting. Exacerbated, thank you. That's the right word, exacerbated. Right.
So, you know, one piece I had heard a lot about, read a lot about, was the national stockpile of medicines, of drugs. And typically it was to be used for things like an anthrax attack, Tamiflu be one of those if you had a pandemic flu event, and what other types of drugs might be in there. So I've heard about that, but how does that national stockpile fit into your initiative and this whole dispensing of those drugs?
I think it's a great fit. I mean, the Strategic National Stockpile Response Plan typically deals with addressing the acute care needs, the stuff that you're talking about, the dispensing of Cipro in a timely manner, and in large quantities of it. Tamiflu, large quantities of it. And so the SNS response plan, the backbone of administering that plan is pharmacies, retail pharmacies, and pharmacist dispensing it. It's a great fit for our initiative because ours is a continuation. So after you stabilize a patient on Cipro, let's say, that person may still have high blood pressure or diabetes or seizure disorders that needs addressing. And SNS typically doesn't have the formulary capacity to address. Formulary, as in the medications that they carry, might be 72-hour supply worth or short term. We come in and provide the 30-day supply for those chronic disease needs once the patients are stabilized. So it's a nice little continuation piece there that we're offering.
All right. I'd like to get very personal. And, you know, and I've had a lot of questions from people about this. We say to be prepared for minimum of 3 days. Most emergency managers in this region of the world, because of earthquakes, are saying a week, 7 days to be prepared. And people understand water, food, and the other batteries, flashlights, those pieces. And we say, medicines, don't forget to have your medicines. And they'll say, well, look, I can't refill my medicines until 7 days before. I just think about those diabetic children who really need that insulin. And so what advice do you have to people at home for the diseases that it's not my anti-statin cholesterol drug is not going to kill me if I don't have it for a week or two, but really it's critical. What would you tell people to do? How should they coordinate that with their doctor and their pharmacist?
First and foremost, I encourage all of them to keep a list of their active medications. And so, can I ask you a quick question? What does that look like to you? If your pharmacist tells you, hey, Eric, I need you to keep track of most updated medication list, how would that look like for you? What would you write in your little cheat sheet?
In my little cheat sheet thing?
Yeah.
The name of it and then the dose.
And how often do you take it? Would that make it?
That's a good idea.
See, so that's exactly, this is the kind of stuff that I run into as an ED pharmacist too. I mean, a patient comes in with a list of medications that they're on, but it's typically incomplete. So let's say for your, in your instance, let's say if you're on simvastatin, so-and-so dose, taking it daily, I would encourage patients to write the actual medication, the dose, how frequently do you take it, and what do you take it for? Give me the entire clinical picture. So that way, you know, when you are in a disaster, you pull out that sheet and you give it to a pharmacist or your primary care provider. They're able to set you up with the right care. For somebody who has life-threatening illness, things such as insulin, or an asthma patient that you need to have a rescue inhaler on you at all times. Somebody with chest pain, good idea to have a nitro, tablets on you to relieve that chest pain. Insulin, keep snacks with you. So diabetic patients, keep snacks with you if your blood sugar bottoms out. Keep a glucometer with you to keep track of what exactly your blood glucose range is from. And then also an insulin pen. Typically it lasts for 28 days or so. Insulin pens or insulin vials, and if you're using vials, make sure you have needle syringes to draw up the exact dose. So those are the advice that I would have for that vulnerable patient population.
Okay.
But keep that medication list as active as possible, and take it to your pharmacist and have it checked. Because your medication might change, especially if you're on an anticoagulant. It might change on a monthly basis or bi-weekly basis.
Okay.
So update those doses as those changes take place.
Okay. All right. So kind of going back to the network, you talked about the State Pharmacy Association taking that over, which I think is a great thing because it's kind of into the system more though. But if there's a pharmacist watching this program now interested in more information or want to become informed, how would they do that?
I would say get in touch with your local Department of Health and sign up for the Medical Reserve Corps. So go to your medicalreservecorps.org website and become a volunteer as soon as you can. There are plans with the Office of Emergency Management recruiting from the Medical Reserve Corps, the volunteer pharmacists, the volunteer pharmacy students, and also pharmacy technicians.
And this is the Washington State Department of Health
Correct.
Emergency Management Office.
Correct. Right. This initiative is only being piloted in the state of Washington currently. And so the Office of Emergency Management for the state of Washington will, they're trying to create a process where Medical Reserve Corps pharmacy volunteers will get an opportunity to register as a state volunteer. And we made this decision because MRC's, Medical Reserve Corps, is local jurisdictions.
Yes.
And it's and we want to mobilize a pharmacist statewide. And so that's the number one suggestion that I have. Join the Medical Reserve Corps.
Okay.
Number two, get in touch with Jenny Arnold with the Washington State Pharmacy Association. She's one of the directors.
What's the name?
Jenny Arnold.
Okay.
She's with the Washington State Pharmacy Association, and she can be reached at jenny@wsparx.org. Jenny@wsparx.org.
Okay. And she'll suck you into the system.
Yes. So she's going to give you with further notifications and information on what this initiative is all about and how you can get integrated.
Okay. Very good.
Into this program.
And then we got like a minute left. So any last thoughts about the next steps in promoting the network or what we've talked about here today?
I would love for the audience viewing this program to join the Medical Reserve Corps and also get in touch with the Office of Emergency Management for the state of Washington and Washington State Pharmacy Association at Jenny, with Jenny Arnold. The second thing is I'd like to promote this initiative to colleges of pharmacy and to those benefactors who might be sympathetic towards this cause. I would love to gain your support. Call us, email us, call Jenny, myself, and would love to get this initiative going and then partner with Red Cross.
Well, thanks for your energy on this, and I think it's a great example of what one person can do with some energy and passion for it. And as a takeaway, your water mug, if we aren't drinking coffee, you get to take this with you.
Thank you.
As a memento, and hopefully people, you're tuning in today, that this has been informative for you. And remember that whether it's drugs, disasters, emergencies, it's up to you to do your part to become better prepared. Thanks for watching, and tune in again soon. Bye-bye.